Hello, everybody. Spider here, DeFi Car Podcast, coming to you from San Antonio, Texas. Have none other than Doug, frontman from Doug and the Slugz with me. How are you, man?
I'm doing good, man. It's good to be here with you.
No, likewise, bro. Man, one of the things I've been looking you guys up, your music, the fact that you guys have been around since the mid 80s blows my mind because I had no idea.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't because it all kind of happened so quick. We started, and then literally by the end of '85, it was over with. I think it's very similar to the bands. I think, the early oi scene in England, in London, where it was really short lived. So it was kind of short lived for us here as well. And then I went on to do other things, and some of the guys disappeared. And then finally, after many years, we were able to kind of get back together again and then play those old songs.
No, definitely, man. And I gotta ask you, is everybody, all the members, the original members?
Okay, so as of today, we're missing two guys. So when we started the band, it originally was me and Scott Graham and a kid named Sard, and then Kevin, who played drums. So, but that was kind of short lived. Sard, we removed Sard out of the band. He's still a close brother of ours, but we removed him because he really didn't know we were 15 years old. Sard was 17, and Sard originally was a singer who was singing in one of the first kind of crass peace punk bands in Los Angeles, and they played with Black Flag, Red Cross, some of these early punk shows in 1982. So Sard kind of quit that band and started playing bass for us, but he didn't even have a bass. He was borrowing one. This is all kid stuff. So we quickly got Craig in the band. So Craig's still with me now, and Kevin left early on. We got Aaron. So it was Aaron came in after a year. So when we got back together recently, it was Aaron, Scott, me, and Craig. So it kind of was the original lineup, and we did some recordings with that lineup as well.
Okay, yeah, man. Because one of the things you brought up was the fact that earlier on, of course, the bands break up. I know in England, like with the resort, the business, all of them because of the violence. Was that the same thing with you guys?
Same exact thing. So it's like we start by the time 1985 came around, when we started the band, really even in Los Angeles, there weren't many skinheads. There's a
Right.
huge LA punk scene, but only a few skinheads. And there was kind of a little bit of a different thing where there was a skinhead, and you would really see these people at the punk shows, but you kind of have to go out to Hollywood back in those days because that was the epicenter for the punk scene. That's where all the clubs were, and
Right.
I'm an LA guy, so we never went down to the beach cities, which is, that's a 45-minute hour drive. We just didn't go down in those areas. We stayed out in LA proper, or we went out to Hollywood. So there's two different kinds of skinheads back then. You had some skinheads that were more like kind of like mods, or
Right.
it was kind of, riding scooters, listening to a lot of two-tone music. And those guys became good friends of ours, but they were a little bit older than we were, and they kind of hung around these kind of dance kind of clubs where okay. So then you got the other skinheads who come more directly from the old LA punk scene. And how I was influenced was the craziest thing is a skinhead from London just moved like a half a mile from my house. So yeah, he was older and super violent, and I mean, I was real impressionable. So when I met him, I was 15 years old. I was just out of middle school, and here comes this dude walking around with boots and braces and a big ass tattoo, and back then we're talking that's hardcore.
Yeah.
Walking the street looking like that. Even it was even kind of a outcasted from the punk scene because skinheads and punk rockers, everything was so tribal back then that it was like, yeah, even so I kind of saw this guy. I just shadowed him,
Right.
and then I just got so into oi music, and I ordered the Last Resort album from the Last Resort store at that point, which was in London. which was still open. I think it lasted till about 85 or something. So once I got that record in 1982, that just changed my life. And I really went through the neighborhood and started showing every punk kid, like, hey, man, like, fuck Black Flag and the Circle Jerks. You need to listen to this.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? This, at first they're like, well, this kind of sucks, man. It's real slow. And I said, no, listen to the lyrics, this is what, and then it was like spread like wildfire throughout my area, the Northeast LA area of these few cities. And then just all these kids just started shaving their head and getting and finding their way to get Dr. Martens, which was pretty difficult even at that point in LA.
Yeah, no, and I can imagine because even now, like shipping anything from England's a pain in the ass, bro. Like you gotta wait and then you gotta pay double, and it's just,
Yeah,
yes.
there was one shop in Los Angeles at that point which had Dr. Martens, and that store was called Posers, and that's a
Oh,
famous punk shop that was on Melrose. And it really was, there was nothing on there was a few stores on Melrose at that time. There was a rockabilly store called Let It Rock, or I think it was called Let It Rock, and then there was Vinyl Fetish, which was a record store. So later on, this area would become obviously a fashion,
yeah.
miles of stores and stuff. But back then, there was only one. There was really only one or two stores, and kids would go down to that place. And that store was owned by an English couple, so they were bringing a lot of that stuff over, and you could get you could get a Cockney Rejects T-shirt there. You could get braces and boots, and that's where everybody would go to get their stuff.
Yeah, no, no, for sure, man. I mean, back you're talking about for you guys, this was like mid 80s, right? You said 83, 84.
Yeah, in the beginning, it's before even the band started. 82 was the time that I became a skinhead, and then a year later the band started, and that was even challenging. I don't want to drag on too long with answers, but that was even challenging because a lot of these bands didn't want us playing with them. A lot of the kind of LA punk style bands, they didn't want a bunch of skinheads coming to their shows, because these kids were most of the time fucking these shows up, and a lot of fighting's going on, and then they don't really understand it because these bands are sounding like the Adolescents or Black Flag, and then you come in and we're playing oi music, which was really, we're just trying to rip off the Foreskins or the Last Resort, doing our best at that. And then these guys were just like, yeah, we're not really into having all these fucking skinheads at our shows. So, couldn't last so long because so much violence slowly was going on. More and more kids became skinheads. And then by the time in the end, it's like, dude, we would play and it was packed with skinheads, but there was just nothing but fighting going on because it's all kids. They're not adults.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember those days, man. And for us here too, after a while, it got old because we paid to get in a club, and before we knew it, we're thrown out. And I'm like, dude, like, what are we paying for, man? Like, it became a headache. But yeah, I mean, we're young and dumb, right? So, but here we are, man. Now we're old and dumb. Well, at least I am.
I'm old and dumb too, brother.
Yeah, but yeah, man. But all this time happened, and when was it that you guys initially came back into the music scene? Like,
Okay, so I carried on. With playing after Doug and the Slugz broke up. My life my life at that time got a little bit wiped out, and I started. There was a lot of gang stuff going on with me, where I wound up kind of like getting out of the punk scene, and then I, not far from where I lived was a neighborhood, so I got involved with a cholo gang up there, and that happened. That was like 2 or 3 years that I was doing that and watching kids get killed, and kids and people going to prison. And I finally said, I gotta quit this because I'm that's what's gonna wind up happening to me. So I got out of I left the neighborhood, and then I went back to hang around some punk kids that I knew from another city, and they had a band going called the Jinx. And then that band kind of frayed and became a band called Schlep Rock. So I joined this in '89. I joined Schlep Rock, started singing for them. That lasted for 8 years, and then at that point, I went, and that band broke up. I started a band called the Generators, who have been to San Antonio to play a few times, And then in 2017, I had my 50th birthday party, and I thought, oh, what a great idea to maybe I can have Doug and the Slugz uh, play this at the pub where we do a lot of gigs,
Yeah.
and and uh, and that's how this all happened again.
Wow.
So and we played for my 50th birthday party, and then that was me, Craig, and Aaron, and
Right.
then Scott Graham, who is not with us right now, he, after the skinhead days kind of died, he wound up just being, most of his life was spent in prison.
Oh
Prison,
wow.
okay, a lot of life trauma there with a lot, most of us. So Scotty, when we found Scotty again, he was just out of prison and homeless, living 2 hours away in the desert. And that's a long story of how we found him. A lady contacted me, and we went out there and got him. And then we helped rebuild his life, put him in men's homes, uh, got him help with a lot of things. And he had been playing with us for almost 3 years. And then he went, just in June, he went back to the streets. So
Wow.
him again, and it's a big loss because he's one of my best friends since we've been a kid. But it's there's not much we can do because there's mental health problems, there's addiction problems, and things like that. So me and Craig have decided to carry on.
No, no, it's unfortunate, man, because obviously, I mean, he was a big part of you guys, and the fact that I mean, and I've had people like that in my life, man, where it's like if they themselves don't say they need help, but they won't get it, and it's up to them, So
It's
maybe he'll be like that.
And in the end, you can only do so much, and then he just wasn't, at this point, he's not capable. So it's like we just, we love him, and we hope that he's going to make it again out there. But I took 6 months off through all that, and decided that, okay, man, like, I'm all good, let's carry on with this. And now we're kind of back up and running again, got some shows coming up.
No, yeah, and that's one of the things I wanted to bring you on this because I mean, you guys have been to San Antonio before. You've came through Texas. Right now, is everything you're playing local, like to California?
We're playing. So we have a couple. We're playing Oakland next week, and then we come back to LA at the end of May. We have two shows here in LA and in Pomona, and then we are scheduled to go up to. I can't announce that yet, but we are going down into the South
Okay.
um, this summer to play a festival um, down there, and nothing in Texas yet. We just went there once with Doug and the Slugz and played in outside of Austin. There was this small festival, and so we played that, and unfortunately there wasn't that many people there. I don't know why, but there was 3 nights of bands, and but we went there, we tried, and but I hope we get back there again soon.
No, for sure, man. I mean, because like I said, I know there's a lot of bands that have came through here already. When it comes to the scene, like I haven't been out to shows in years. I got my buddies that still go out there. Some of them are still playing in bands, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to make it. I mean, if you guys come back, then for sure I'll be out there, man. I mean, I listen to your music. I listen to. I guess you said the song "Pistols" was an old write up that you guys brought back. Right?
Yeah, it's an old song it's crazy that Scott was capable of helping after being in prison for so long and being on the streets. The guy and all the drugs and craziness, he had such a memory. So it's really like kind of he's in arrested development. Things stopped for that guy when he was kind of 17, and he's still kind of emotionally and mentally a 17-year-old, but he remembered everything. So when me and Craig were struggling, he's like, no, here's the song. And he would just pick up the guitar and play these songs, and half this shit was like, man, I got a good memory, but I'm like, dude, I remember this song, and then once he started playing it, he's all singing it. And I'm like, oh, this is crazy, man. So we were able to actually kind of, um, you know, uh, go back in and record these songs again. Because when we were kids, there were demo cassettes made.
Yeah.
This is a whole another story because we didn't put out any vinyl, which is such a shame. We did try, but I personally didn't want to be on Mystic Records or some of the record labels that were going in LA at the time because being a kid, again, it's all tribal. And I'm like, well, I don't want to be on a record label with Dr. No or Ill Repute or even maybe, you know, early Bad Religion with Epitaph or something when they started their own label, because that's not what we're doing. So I was sending these cassettes to England, and I was sending them to No Future Records, who put out all Blitz's stuff and those Red Alert and all Partisans and those great bands. I sent it to them, and I sent it to the Last Resort store, who put out the Last Resort album. So I sent it to Mickey French, and he loved it. And that made me, he was like, hey mate, I'm playing it for all the skinheads in the shop and they love it too, man. And he's also, maybe he'd put out this record, United Skins. It's a compilation, and he said maybe on the next compilation I'll use one of your guys' songs or two, but that never happened. And then we broke up and the store closed.
Yeah, bro. And I think it's one of those where you guys were ahead of the times. I mean, you guys were, you know, if it would have been a couple years later, you guys would have been all over the place, man.
I think if we would have put a record out, even if we would have broken up, that it would have been it would have been a lot different, because I think that would have been a lot easier. Once we got back together, a lot of people have been, oh man, we've been waiting forever. I managed to get a copy of that record, you know, because that's how oi and the punk scene, the skinhead scene is, because everything's so anybody who's into it knows all about, you know, the music, you know what I mean? So, and the history of it. So like you. So yeah, so that's what happened. But I am stoked that you contacted me, because it's very strange, because I just started kind of training and getting really, especially when I stopped playing music, I became extremely active. I was always been at the gym and stuff, but then I started running and I started boxing. And because that was helping me. I just lost both my parents during COVID. I lost, you know, back to back, which was pretty hard. You know, I was extremely close with my mom, and watched them both, hospice and everything. So I was fucked up. And then I lost my best friend back to the street. So I started going, man, I don't want to drink and party. That's not, I'm 55, and like, that's not going to fix any of this. So I started saying, I'm going to get out and I'm going to start running. And I was running 2 miles, and then 4 miles, and then 10 miles, and then 13 miles.
Yeah.
You know, training. So this was going on 4 or 5 days a week. And I just had left the academy with a kid here in Whittier, California, called Noah Tillis, who fought professionally some MMA stuff, and he has his own jiu-jitsu academy. And I just left, and then you had messaged me.
Yeah.
Oh, I was trying to put both of them together. I'm like, oh, here's a guy who likes oi music and also does this MMA podcast. And I was like, oh, I'm freaking crazy. So
No, talk about timing, man. Definitely,
yeah,
bro. 'Cause, yeah, like I myself, like I got into the punk skate rock like in the mid '80s. I was a skater. I didn't get into the oi scene back till it was like 1990, 91. But like I want to say like 94, 95, I started actually a zine here in town, and it was called Working Class Nobody.
okay.
And so I was interviewing whatever band was coming through, and we had a bunch of them coming through, like The Business. We had Rabies before he passed away. I mean, we had like hardcore, just ska band. So I had 4 issues, but because of that, I had gotten a hold of John Vulture Rock, the label. I had gotten a hold of Headache Records out there in New York, Bronco Bullfrog, and I started doing games, and they were like, "Hey man, can you sell some music?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So all of them, dude. I was getting boxes of vinyl and shirts, and I was selling them, bro, out of my trunk.
Cool.
And yeah, I kept a lot of copies, and they got their money, and I mean, I loved it, you know. So I kept my zine going. I had their labels in the back for, the advertisement, but because of that, I got to meet a lot of people, and this is back before internet, man. Like we were writing letters, we had pen pals, and
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah, me too. Then that's how it was for me. Writing, or I writing bands back when I was a kid, and then getting a reply from them was like freaking huge. I wrote The Business in
yeah,
1982, and I wanted to go to London with a buddy of mine. You know, we're just kids fantasizing, and saved up probably like $20, which we wound up buying weed and beer with about a month later. But I wrote The Business, from the Harry May 7-inch. They had their address there, and then they wrote me back. and it was Mark Brennan, the bass player, and said, and at this point, I'm not a skinhead yet. I'm still a punk rocker, you know. And I was going, hey man, if I come over to see you guys play, will I get? I was smart enough to like, oh, will I get jumped because I'm not a skinhead? Will I get beat up because I'm not a skinhead? I'm 15 at this time. And then he wrote me back. He said, no, Dougie, if you come over, we'll promise we'll take care of you. You can come to the show with us. Because and later, years later, I would speak with Mark, who ran Captain Oi Records, right? I don't
Yeah.
know if you've heard of the imprint. So Mark left the business and he started Captain Oi. He had a couple, I think he had Link Records, but Mark in the 90s when I wrote him again said, that's crazy you're contacting me because I remember the letter you sent as a kid. You were the only guy writing from California. So
Yeah.
we were all like amazed that, wow, our records are in California. Here's this kid writing.
Oh yeah, man. Because even then, the other day I was talking to my oldest. You know, she's 21 now, but I was telling her, I said, man, back in my day, we had to wait 2-3 weeks for somebody to talk shit, man. We had to write a letter, send it off, and I mean, it was crazy. But yeah, man. I mean, getting stuff from bands for me. I mean, I used to do reviews, so they send me their tape, their cassette, this when CDs were barely starting to get on board.
Right.
But before that, I had a bunch of vinyl, man, and so I kept it. I had a lot of rarities, a lot of good stuff, man. Of course, Last Resort, Foreskins. I mean, you name it, man. I got a hold of a bunch of good stuff, so I
Yeah,
was
that's
good.
great. And you were helping out the scene in San Antonio just by putting out that fanzine, man. Other kids were probably looking at that and sitting there staring at it all day and night, you know.
Oh
That's
yeah, you see,
right.
then a lot of people didn't know it was me. I had people that were like, "Oh man, I got this zine from Germany," and I'm looking at it and I'm like, "Dude, that's my zine." And he's
Yeah.
like, "Oh no," and I said, "Go to the back," and they had a PO box, San Antonio, Texas, and they're like, "What, dude? Like that's you?" I'm like, so they ordered it all the way from England, from Germany, and I'm like, "Dude, I have one right here in my hand." They're like,
Hey, and that's cool because yeah, because back then too, I played down in San Antonio at a place called the DMZ.
"Oh yeah, woo, yeah."
Remember the place? Yeah, I spent the night in there a few times too, way back in the early 90s, man. There was a crazy guy around that place, man. He had a couple of dogs. So you'd be playing in that DMZ club, and the dogs would be in the slam pit with all the kids, slamming with them.
That place, like for me, I used to go there out of high school. I went to Kennedy High School, which was down the street from that club. And
Okay.
this was like 88, 89, 90, 91. Like, I mean, I was there like every weekend, man. Like local bands. I mean, it was crazy, crazy stuff, man. Damn.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I was going, oh, wait a minute. Like, was this place actually? And I said, yeah, that was in San Antonio, the DMZ. I remember the place. What's that?
You remember the owner, Tony?
That's who it is. Tony, the guy Tony, the crazy guy. Yeah, he was really cool, man.
Oh,
We
yeah.
go down, we would never get paid. I remember one time, I think we had been in the van touring so much. I was only 22 at this time, 23. And man, we were so hungry. We had dry top ramen and we were just pouring bottles of water on it, trying to soften it up to eat it, man. You know, that's how it was, living out of the van and stuff like that. But yeah, so I know the San Antonio zine, so that's really cool that you were doing that back then.
Oh yeah, man, and you're actually my first guest coming back, so I appreciate you,
Cool.
man. Because I have a couple of
Right
bands
on.
lined. I'm gonna be hitting up some ska bands, some people that come through here. Of course, I'm gonna catch them if I can. But
Yeah.
yeah, man. I mean, as far as influence, because they're on your page, of course, you said you had like Last Resort, Foreskins. But what other music were you influenced by?
Okay, so I think like other than Oi music. So
Right.
yeah, punk. It all started with like for me. Well, the early days of as a kid, my brother had lots of rock records, so he's always playing Kiss. Oh man, Bachman Turner Overdrive, all that kind of classic rock stuff. But later on, what happened was I have a cousin who lived down at the beach in Huntington Beach, and he was an early Huntington Beach surf punk rocker. And so I go down there as a kid, I was 11, and he'd be playing the Sex Pistols and the Dickies and the Jam and the
Yeah.
right. So he's playing this stuff, but it was the Sex Pistols record that I heard, which just blew me away. And at that point, it's like I needed to know what that was, you know, because I was so into it. So I'm not sure if I stole the record, the Nevermind the Bollocks record, but I remember I had the Buzzcocks as well, and I was coming back to my elementary school singing these songs, and the kids are like, "What the fuck are you singing?" And I had a little Union Jack pin that said "punk" with a safety pin thing on it, and you know, and so for me, that's how I got into all that. I love Cheap Trick, Blondie. You know, I come from Pasadena, so I grew up with Van Halen. You know,
Yeah.
my aunt went to school with the Brothers, and so all that stuff influenced me. And then started going to gigs, and you know, and every weekend you here in LA, you'd see the Circle Jerks or the Descendants
Damn.
or Wasted Youth, or you know, all these bands they played. They just played all the time. But
Okay.
yes, but at some point the reason I got out of that stuff was because those guys started like by 83, these guys are growing their hair out. They're looking like kind of Charlie Manson. And I'm going, man, this doesn't reflect what I'm into. I'm not into this. And then I heard bands like Blitz, you know, and some of the UK 82 stuff. And I just was like, you know what? And I just shifted gears. That just led me to oi music, you know.
No, and one of the things like the Blitz, man, I always liked their sound because it wasn't even like on the same category as Oi music, man. It was they were on their own lane and they just rocked, dude.
And it was aggressive, man. So if you're a young kid, like you know, and you're aggressive, when you
Oh
hear
yeah,
when you hear music like that, right? It's actually talking to you because that's how you feel. So for me, that was one of the very first bands, and then picking up All Out Attack or Never Surrender, the 45s. Just looking at a photo of them, or finding these little photos that you could find on these albums, especially on some of the Oikon, and you see these guys, and they're a world away, man. But it's
yeah,
like, but it's just guys like me and you, certain people, that stuff just connected to, you
oh
know,
yeah.
and this shit's real, this shit's tough. And I want and the sound is it's aggressive, it's tough, and this is what I want. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to be into.
Oh yeah. It's just like you said earlier. You listen to it and you're like, man, I need to find out who that is, man. I mean, this.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's still timeless, right? You're here doing an interview with me, and like we're talking about music that was 40 years ago, you know, and
Oh,
it's like and over 40, and how timeless it is. Where some of those rock bands, they're fucking long gone, some of them, but some of this stuff, people like you and I and other friends we have, we're still collecting these old records, and they're still in our record collection because we love those records so much and those bands. That's
oh yeah.
amazing.
I have a buddy of mine. He's actually in New Braunfels. He's having this thing called the Take the Skinheads Tubing. His family has a property out there in New Braunfels. They have a river that runs through, but he's actually having it. It's coming up pretty soon, and I'll send you the link so you can check it out. But he just announced that Oxblood is playing up there.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. We met one of those guys. I met this. I don't know, it was a singer. I met him when we played the show in Texas. I think he
Yeah,
lives in
yeah,
Austin.
yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So yeah, so he had posted that, and I said, man, that'd be maybe next year, man. We'll see. Get you guys down here.
Right on.
But yeah, man. But as far as tours, of course, you said you're playing local to California right now. Hopefully soon you'll be going elsewhere.
Yeah, I hope that we were able to make it over to the East Coast. Last year or before COVID, we were in Europe, which was great. We got asked to play the Great Skinhead Reunion, which is in Brighton, and when we got asked to play that, that was kind of like, you know, that was a big deal for us. We went over to Germany and into the Czech Republic to play some shows, and then we wound up our last gig in Brighton, right where Quadrophenia was filmed, in the same on the same building. And they have then so we played there with some other oi bands, and I think they had like Cimarip or something like that play on Sunday, and if I believe so correctly, but we when we got there, you know, my first concern is like, or you know, I'm hoping these people are kind of like peers, right? It's all these old British skinheads. First, I'm thinking, okay, I hope there's no trouble here, and I hope nothing gets crazy. And then I hope that they accept our band, you know, for many reasons, sound wise, Americans, anything. I didn't know, you know. So, but we got there, everybody was cool, and we played, and it just went off, you know, and we have a lot of fans just from playing that gig. And that's just so that made us feel really good because in the beginning, we just always wanted to go there and play. You know, we were barely able to get out of LA County, man. Being a kid, right? You're 15 or 16, only one guy's got a car, everything's getting stuffed in there, you know,
Yeah.
to go 30 minutes from your house, it's a big deal.
No, yeah. I mean, that some. Did you feel like that was approval for you guys once you got to make it out there, man?
Total validation, man. It was like to play in front of that crowd and have that crowd pack into a club. I don't know, maybe some of them knew who we were, and then but like they just ate it up, you know, because they understood it because
Yeah.
we were playing the same kind of music that we were influenced by what they're influenced from. So it was yeah, it was really good. I hope to go back there again, you know. So we might maybe try to go back into England next year.
Well,
East
the thing.
Coast
Go
too.
ahead.
No, yeah, East Coast too, I think, and England.
No, I was gonna say if they didn't know who you guys were when you got there, I'm sure they did once you guys left, man.
They did, man. And now they're like people that are, you know, messaging us through Facebook, and people are becoming friends, and that's really cool, man. And that's what it was always about in the first place, right? Going to a gig and meeting people and having that kind of brotherhood thing, you know.
Oh yeah, man. That's one thing I like about music. It's just like for me, I still skateboard. I mean, I don't do anything because I'm old. I'm older. I don't want to fall down.
Yeah, me
But I still go out there and it's like all the youngsters. It's just like mutual. You know, everything's like it's just like you don't age. You know, you go to the band. It's just music. It's just you know. I like it, man. It keeps me young, so no complaints, man.
and I love skate. I come from the place of where skateboarding kicked off, you know, and as a kid, I was a big skateboarder. Right before right before I really got into the punk scene, I was skateboarding at all the early skate parks here, and I grew up with Lance Mountain, who's a famous, you know, Paul Peralta. Yeah, he's just right. He grew up just down the road from me. I used to go skate his ramp. And you know, I used to run around with the early Sims amateur team because I was all into Sims skateboards. And this is all 70. I'm old, man. 77, 70. So I love that culture. And you can't, you know, that culture is so connected with punk music because you know, it started punk music started from that whole thing here in California, you know.
No, no, yeah, man. I mean, you know, like I said, I've been skateboarding since like the '80s. You know, no tricks or anything. But when I got to high school, that's when I got introduced to new wave and then punk rock, and then '88, '89, and you know, I started listening to Oi, and I'm like, man, what is this? And it sucked me right in, man. I knew it. I was like, you know what, that's it, man. And it shaped me before I knew it. I shaped my head, put boots on, and that was it. It was a
Yeah,
go.
that's crazy. And here we are still after still, you know, that music's just so there's something to say about it, man, because there's so many guys like me and you who are, you know, getting a lot older and still like just still connected to that thing, you know. That's cool.
Yeah, man, for sure. And then anything as far as I mean the members right now, you guys are still you still have the full group, right? You were saying?
Oh, so it's just right now it's me and Craig. I got Mike from the Generators playing guitar, and I got Mike Clark, who comes from some 90s oi bands here in LA, Fully Loaded, the Boot Boys, Tough Skins. These
Yeah.
bands, he drummed for all those. He's an early 90s guy who was playing with those bands. But right now it's just me and Craig from the original days, and you know, and if Scotty ever comes back, then you know, then there's always his spot's always there for him.
Oh, for
So
sure. Even if he doesn't come back to the band, as long as he comes back home, you know, I mean that'd be good enough, right?
exactly, man. That's all that matters.
No, no. Man, I do appreciate you. I know we fumbled earlier trying to get this technology thing going, man. It was a mess.
Yeah,
But I
well, I
want
appreciate you too, man, and I look forward to the podcast and uh and and keep doing what you're doing.
no, no, I will. And I will be in touch, man. Don't hang up yet though. Everybody
Okay,
out there, Doug and the Slugz, Spider DeFi podcast. So next time, follow up.
see ya.